Coronavirus. It's everywhere, both literally and figuratively. We're locked inside trying to flatten the curve while every newspaper, radio program, and TV news broadcast is saturated.
Coronavirus pandemic. Coronavirus crisis.
Coronavirus pandemic.
We've heard a lot about where in China the virus came from, a lot about how it spread, and a bit about how the virus originated.
There's some evidence it went from a bat to a pangolin before infecting a human.
While such transmission might seem unlikely, it turns out infectious diseases are finding more footholds around the world, and much of that is our fault.
We've had wave after wave of invasive new infections, as well as a rise in the ones that are already endemic and exist here now. It's probably no coincidence, especially as we as humans encroach upon natural habitats. We are coming into contact with species that normally we would not encounter.
While some might claim we couldn't have predicted coronavirus,
but it's an unforeseen problem, not a problem. Came out of nowhere.
it turns out we kinda could. Scientists have been warning us about pandemics for years. And not just corona. Infectious diseases of all stripes could be on the rise.
In the next tens of years, I do anticipate seeing more outbreaks of vector-borne and zoonotic diseases in particular.
This is Think Again with me, Andrew Stern, where I take you every step of the way as I dig into compelling, complex, or controversial topics that make us wonder, do we need to think again? So normally I'd be talking to you from a studio in 30 Rock before jumping on a plane or a train to go interview someone somewhere else. But as you can see, like most of America, I'm sheltering in place in a 700 square foot Brooklyn apartment. Anyway, about 6 weeks ago, when the coronavirus story just began to resonate in America, I became interested in where diseases like this come from, and are there any trends predicting their rise? One of our interns showed me a study from the scientific journal Nature, which concluded Ebola outbreaks were noticeably worse in areas that had recently been deforested, which raised a larger question for me. Are humans to blame for making disease outbreak worse, especially when it comes to viruses like Ebola or COVID-19 that have the capability to become pandemics? So I reached out to Dr. Amy Vitor, an expert in vector-borne disease, who has studied deforestation's impact on disease transmission for decades. She FaceTimed me from a hospital in Gainesville, Florida, where she was working on the front lines of the coronavirus response.
The thing that got me started in all this was really looking at how deforestation of the Amazon influenced malaria in particular. And there we found a very strong association between malaria breeding sites for the malaria vector, Anopheles, and the degree of deforestation that we're finding there.
It's worth noting there's two types of infectious disease impacted by deforestation. Vector-borne disease, which is what Dr. Vitor is talking about here. Vector-borne means the disease is carried by a blood-feeding organism, like mosquitoes or ticks. The other, which she'll get into in a bit, is zoonotic disease, which happens when a disease makes a jump between animals and humans, like Ebola, SARS, and COVID-19. How strong of a link did you find between deforestation and the rise in infectious disease in those areas?
We saw it was very clear. In forested areas that were pristine, we saw none of the vector, essentially. But when we took that same method to villages that were deforested, there we saw a many-fold increase in the number of these mosquitoes breeding in the water and biting humans as well.
Humans cut down forests for any number of reasons. Logging, mining, converting land to farms. When we settle on land that recently was a forest, or put our livestock there, it puts us and our food supply in closer and consistent contact with animals we wouldn't normally encounter. You have primarily focused, or at least originally focused, on deforestation in the Amazon. Are we seeing a similar pattern in other areas of the world that have been deforested with both mosquitoes and other vectors? So, for example, the Nipah virus outbreak that occurred in the late 1990s entailed essentially an outbreak of an encephalitis that affected especially workers in pig farms and pig abattoirs. And those people were getting quite sick and falling ill and dying. And also the pigs were sick. It
turned out to be a virus that was known to be carried in flying foxes. Because of droughts and slash and burn agriculture, there was a haze that hung over all that rainforest, basically reducing the amount of fruit available for those flying foxes. So that caused them to migrate up north to Malaysia and Singapore, causing that outbreak there.
When humans cut down forests, water settles into shallow pools, which is ideal for mosquito breeding.
When you get an area after deforestation, essentially, you have trees that then are strewn to the ground. The logs block the streams and the rivers, and that in itself causes blockage and accumulation of water. When people then build farms or villages on that now cleared land, they're suddenly in close contact with more mosquitoes, as well as potentially diseased animals whose habitat we just cut down. Because mosquitoes aren't the only vector spreading diseases because of deforestation. For example, the Northeast US has seen an explosion of Lyme disease. A big reason is the rapid expansion of the suburbs there. More people are in contact with deer and the disease-carrying ticks that feed on the deer. To put it in context, between 2004 and 2016, US cases of disease caused by ticks, mosquitoes, and fleas tripled. Recent epidemics like Zika and West Nile virus have both been linked to deforestation and habitat changes caused by humans. The same seems to be true for the zoonotic diseases that make the jump from animals to humans, like we think COVID-19 did. Like I said in the beginning of the video, Ebola outbreaks are strongly correlated with recent deforestation in Central and West Africa, which brings me back to the original question. Are humans to blame for the uptick in infectious disease we seem to be seeing? And will it get worse going forward? The more research I read, the stronger that link seemed to be, which could make for a pretty uncertain future. Certainly, we're going places where we never used to go before. We're changing habitat at a rapid rate, and so those changes seem to be highly associated with both the mosquitoes, the ticks, as well as vertebrates that tend to thrive under these conditions. So yes, variety of infectious diseases I think will continue to increase over the years because of the pressures that we are exerting on our immediate and expanded environment.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.